Then there's weird stuff like warning lights coming up on the dash, but then when the van's diagnosed, there is no issue to speak of. But then the opposite way around, where the van has an issue, but it never gave you a warning light to warn you something's coming.
Not only are there multiple mechanical packages in these things, the Fiat techs we spoke to for this video mentioned that most of the time they don't even know which engine to expect when they lift the bonnet. Maybe it's that systemic confusion that's responsible for all of the reliability issues.
I honestly thought this would feel so massive that it's just a really intimidating driving experience. But it doesn't, it's a breeze. Okay, you wanna know a fun fact? Even though Fiat have let's be honest, a pretty terrible reputation when it comes to reliability, Toyota, the kings of reliability, have decided to rebadge this as the Toyota Proace Max as their first foray into the large van segment in Europe. So therefore, these should be pretty good, right? Well, how about we find out and also answer the big question if you should ever consider buying one of these, especially in motorhome spec. But first of all, let's find out what goes wrong with them. Which in itself is interesting because there seems to be this massive build quality difference between Ducatos made before 2020 and after. See, it's important to know that there have been multiple different iterations of the Ducato. We're just focusing on the more popular post-2014 updated versions of the third generation, which in itself has been available in multiple different series. But the Series 6 to the current Series 11, they seem to exhibit far better build quality. But more commonly on the pre-2020 models, there are so many reports of just weird electrical gremlins, lighting issues, central locking issues. Basically, if it has electricity running to it, there's someone complaining about it not working. But more annoyingly, even just diagnosing these problems can be an absolute nightmare, and accessing parts, that can be a problem sometimes too. And then we come to the paintwork, because owners have reported everything from fading to the paint even peeling off. In saying that, post-2020 examples, we struggle to find any reports of paint problems. And then when it comes to motorhome examples like this, please make sure that any accessories fitted to the exterior are the highest quality and have been fitted professionally. See, we've come across a whole bunch of reports of all sorts of issues with cheap accessories being fitted poorly. For example, reports of awnings opening up and then ripping off at freeway speeds. That's not ideal. And then when it comes to Ducatos that have been used as a work van, look, it's pretty safe to assume you're going to find some scratches and dings and dents like that, but just make sure it hasn't been abused. And anyway, if it has got a few scratches and dings and dents, that might help you negotiate the price. Also, if the Ducato's been driven by some young apprentices or somebody that just hates their job, there might be a chance that the thing has been completely abused, so it's so critical to make sure you get a pre-purchase inspection carried out. And then when it comes to what's actually available when it comes to the Ducato, locally you'll have the option of 3 wheelbases, 4 lengths and 2 heights in either a box van or cab chassis configuration. And internationally, there are even more configurations available. And when it comes to motorhomes like this, generally speaking, you're going to be dealing with either long or extra long lengths. Engine-wise, the vast majority on the market feature a 2.2 litre turbo diesel, although internationally, over a dozen powertrain packages have been available, including all electric models from 2021. And as far as transmissions go, post-2020, there has been a huge improvement. Gone was the god-awful, stupid automated manual thing. They're a bloody nightmare. And they introduced a 9-speed ZF Auto to replace it. And we'll expand on why those automated manuals are a nightmare and a bunch of other mechanical issues later in the video. Now, even though it is technically a work van, Fiat have offered a really good range of optional accessories for them. We'll delve into that more in a second. And when it comes to motorhomes like this, when it comes to external accessories, well, how many would you like? For example, this Ducato is from our mates at Emu RV, and they've fitted it with an all-terrain pack. This includes the lifted ride height, all-terrain tyres, some bar work and LED spotlights. Actually, also on Emu RV, they were wonderful enough to lend us this to film this video. And if you're after a motorhome, make sure you hit the Emu RV link down below. However, when it comes to the exterior, there might be another issue we need to talk about, and that's just the looks. Obviously in all-terrain spec like this, it does look really, really good. But the standard ones, when you compare that to a fully loaded Nissan Patrol or Toyota Land Cruiser towing some enormous caravan, the standard ones don't maybe stroke your ego as much as they do. And then when it comes to Ducato in just work van spec, we think it makes far more sense to load all of your gear into the back of a van than it does into the back of a dual cab ute. But then the problem with that is, something like a Hilux or a Ranger or an Amarok, they're gonna project more of a masculine vibe and image than a van ever will. Okay, now to common problems inside, it's a bit like the exterior here. The issues seem to be far more prevalent on the pre-2020 models, and the big one with the interiors are electrical issues. We're talking everything from power window issues, just different buttons failing to work, HVAC and air conditioning problems. Then there's weird stuff like warning lights coming up on the dash, but then when the van's diagnosed, there is no issue to speak of. But then the opposite way around, where the van has an issue, but it never gave you a warning light to warn you something's coming. Basically, if you see a button in here, press it and just make sure it works. This also goes for any accessories fitted. Again, make sure that stuff's been professionally done. But then again, just to reiterate, post 2020, we really struggled to find any complaints or reports of any problems. There's the little sporadic issue here and there, but not what we'd call common at all. Then there are the infotainment system issues. Now, this seems to be a pretty common one across all of the Stellantis or FCA group cars, so Jeep, Alfa Romeo, Fiat. Their Uconnect systems, especially on the earlier ones, are utter shit. We're talking all sorts of connectivity issues, Bluetooth dropping out, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto dropping out, screens turning off or just locking up or just getting really slow to use. Even owners have complained about the actual interface as far as using it. It's just not intuitive at all. Now, the good news here is that the more recent examples, the updated versions, the interface and the infotainment system in general seems to be far improved. But they're still not perfect. But let's be honest, chances are you're just going to use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto anyway. It's time for another Wipertech challenge. Will it wipe today's victim? Crackers with gooey cheese dip. Now, before we see how they wipe, Wipertech wiper blades are so easy to order online. They're a breeze to fit, and if you order a set via the link, you're going to get 15% off and free express shipping. Let's see if they wipe. Okay, crackers and cheese. Here we go. Crackers weren't a challenge. Cheese, maybe a little bit more. Okay, so look, unless you drive through a storm of bickies and cheese, these things are going to have you sorted. Get yourself a set today. Actually, just on the features, being a modern vehicle, it comes with everything that you'd expect. Also, Fiat have offered some really good option packs, like there's a tech pack, so the screen gets larger and you get more cameras and whatnot. Also, some of the earlier examples, owners have complained that they think the reversing camera is actually made of potato. On the more recent ones, the camera quality is pretty good. And then when it comes to the actual accommodation up here, I've got to say, these seats are so comfortable. And depending on the spec you can get a whole bunch of features with the seats. They can spin so you can face your passengers in the back. You've got these armrests that are height adjustable, but you could honestly spend hours in this and it's so, so comfy. And it's also important to remember that these things have been around since the early 2000s. So Fiat have constantly honed and improved everything like ergonomics and how resilient the interiors are. That's probably why Toyota are now sticking their badge on it. And look, yeah, obviously the interior is made of mainly incredibly hard plastics, but that's to be expected. It is a work van. These interiors, they need to be ultra resilient. And then as far as actually using the interior in terms of practicality, oh my God, this thing has cubby holes and cup holders and storage everywhere. You ready? Here we go. Storage here and here and here and here. Storage here, that's for your phone. Cup holder here, little bookshelf just there. Glove box there, but it's a bit small. Another 2 cup holders here, spot for your phone here, spot for your phone just here. In the doors, you've got a spot all the way down here, in the middle, with a cup holder, another little storage spot for pens here, smaller crayons here, more storage here, more storage here. And then in 2-seater form, the gap between the seats is so large, you could put a bloody suitcase there. Also, because this is in motorhome RV spec, you've got blinds to block out everyone's view from outside. So you've got that one there, you've even got this one here, ultra private. Now, as far as the safety features go, really good news here. The more recent Ducatos get the full suite of safety gear, including rollover mitigation. Now, this is really important if you're planning on carrying a heap of weight or towing a caravan or a trailer or really anything. These things, the safety systems, are calibrated to handle that sort of weight. Plenty of other tow vehicles out there, they aren't. And then in the back, when it's in actual van spec, here's some fun facts. The gap between the wheel arches is some of the widest in its class, so you can fit a full-size pallet in there. And then, depending on the trim and spec, it has one of the largest payloads in its class. And then when it's in motorhome spec like this, honestly, it's basically a blank canvas to do whatever you want with. Here's the highlights for this one. First of all, there are multiple different bedding configurations. There's storage everywhere. It has a kitchen, including a 3-burner stove. Got a freezer, a fridge, and a microwave. Plus a bathroom and shower that's tall enough for me to stand up in, and I'm 6'2", and a porcelain toilet because really, your bum deserves only the best. Okay, now when it comes to complaints and issues with the driving experience, if you're looking at buying a used work van, chances are it's going to have all of the thousands of kilometers on it. And that means it could have some wear and tear with suspension bushes and suspension components. Just listen out for any weird clunking sounds or vibrations, but the good news here is replacing a lot of that stuff shouldn't be too much of an issue. The other complaint you might hear is that driving something like this is going to feel like driving in a massive bus. But you know what? It actually doesn't. For me, it feels like driving just a large SUV. I honestly thought this would feel so massive that it's just a really intimidating driving experience. But it doesn't, it's a breeze. I mean, judging the parameters is so easy, so things like parking it or dealing with traffic is it's easy. Plus, dealing with real world scenarios like a car park like this, because the mirrors are excellent, there's parking sensors and a camera and the turning circle's really good, it's just easy. Again, another reason that this thing wins, say, compared to a dual cab ute towing a trailer or a tow vehicle in a caravan is just the ease of use. This is easier. And then there are the advantages, let's say economically. Even when they're fully loaded up like this, owners have reported fuel consumption figures of 7 to 8 litres per 100 Ks. And that's especially important if you're in the market for a motorhome, because compared to a tow vehicle and a caravan setup, this thing's going to leave them for dead. Also, fun fact, when it comes to toll roads, these are charged at the same rate as just a normal car. Also, and look, I know this seems stupid when we're talking about a van, but the actual performance, like acceleration, is actually pretty decent. Getting up to speed, like if you're pulling into traffic or even overtaking on the freeway, it doesn't require enormous levels of bravery. Actually, speaking of freeways, something that can be completely terrifying if you're towing a caravan or driving a smaller van is if a truck goes past at speed or you get hit with a crosswind, it can just get buffeted all over the place and it feels like you're going to lose control. In this, because it's larger, not so much. It will move around a little bit, but it's not terrifying like they can be. But what about mechanically, what goes wrong there? Because Fiat has a pretty terrible reputation when it comes to reliability and even after-sale support. What's the story? Well, unfortunately, I can't answer that because I'm not a qualified mechanic. But you know who is? It's Jim.
Look, yeah, I know I ragged on these at the start, but the problem here is there are so many of these on the road. It's not hard and you don't have to look far to find all of the problems. Now, the newer they got, the better they got. Look, they might not be as unreliable as the internet would have you believe, but they do have some problems. Look, I'm going to group all of the diesels together here, and even though they're all completely different engines, they do still share a lot of the same problems. Like all modern day diesels, they have injector seal issues. You can hear that when they start leaking and you can see it. They also have issues with their EGR system and their DPF. And like all diesels, a lot of the DPF issues are related to other problems like boost leaks and blocked map sensors, so make sure you check that first. In 2019, they simplified the EGR systems on the 2.3s, and that's when they introduced the AdBlue system, which also has some problems with the AdBlue injection system, and they also have issues with the AdBlue level sensor and the calibration of that too. Now the 2.3 and the 3 litre, they have timing belts, whereas the 2.2 has a timing chain. Now those timing belts on the 2.3 and the 3 litre are due every 100,000 Ks, do the water pump at the same time. Now with servicing on these, they have another ridiculously long service interval. Ignore that. If you want it to last, do it every 10,000 kilometres. Doing it every 20,000 kilometres as recommended is bad for the engine and it won't last. Now the older 6-speed automatics, the Comfortmatic, that is your typical automated manual. It's a complete shit show basically. They often have issues with their clutch and the actuator system. They leak fluid, and it's recommended, apparently you should check the fluid every 1,000 kilometres on these things. That's the manufacturer's tip. A lot of people can't find the reservoir. It's buried quite deep in the engine bay. You really should be checking it, because if that fluid leaks out, you have no clutch. They have issues with shuttering and adjustment in general. Sometimes you can replace the clutch, the mechatronics unit or the actuator, and all the mounts, and they still shudder. Yeah, they can be very problematic. It's a problematic automatic. It is not grease lightning. Now the 6-speed manual, a lot of people don't like that because they can't drive a manual. They're pretty good gearboxes. They do have problems with their clutch and their dual mass flywheel, but they're overall not too bad. The later models with the 9-speed ZF, it is a conventional automatic, pretty reliable gearbox. Ignore any filled for life servicing recommendations. Service it every 50,000 Ks. But overall, mechanically speaking, one of the biggest complaints here is the availability of parts. Now, in Australia, I should say, with owners reporting really long waits to get their vehicle back on the road just for simple parts. And the cost of those parts too can be astronomical. Another issue people are having here is with the warranties and second stage manufacturers, which is a really good reason to stick to really good quality aftermarket fit outs and avoid the cheap backyarders basically. Now another thing to be mindful of is Fiat or Stellantis in Australia have a terrible reputation for after sales support and service. So much so that the industry watchdog in Australia has put them on notice to improve their game. So you'd like to think that moving forward, things should improve.
But we do need to talk about the other options in the market. When we're talking work vans for the used Ducatos asking price of around $20,000 to $70,000, well, you should also check out the large vans from Iveco, Ford, Volkswagen and Mercedes-Benz. And when it comes to large motorhome RVs like this, pricing currently ranges from about $115,000 to $190,000, which when compared to the combined asking price of a caravan with similar features and a tow vehicle and all of the other paraphernalia that you're going to require, arguably these make far more financial sense. And you know what else makes financial sense? If you're in the market for finance, making sure that you get the absolute best package possible. Now doing this would normally take hours and hours, or you could just let Driver do all the hard work for you by hitting that link down there. Driver will not only find you the very best finance package, but applying online is super easy and totally free, and you can get the cash in your account in no time, plus it has no impact on your credit score. And yet another thing that makes really smart financial sense is the fact that used motorhomes generally retain their value really, really well. However, this doesn't mean that you should actually buy one. We would be extremely cautious of pre-2020 Ducatos. Yes, there are literally hundreds of thousands of them still working hard all over the world, many of them with well over 200 or even 300,000 kilometers on the clock. But according to those in the know, ownership in Australia can be a minefield of issues. Post-2020 Ducatos seem to be a much safer bet, but please get a full pre-purchase inspection carried out and maybe give it newborn puppy levels of care and attention, and you should be right. But I've got a question for you. If you weren't to buy a Ducato or even a motorhome, what would you buy instead and why? Let us know in the comments. See you next time.
Maybe it's the systemic, no, I can't even say systemic now. Maybe it's that systemic confusion that's responsible for all the reliability. Oh, fucking hell. Maybe it's that systemic, oh, this is the one. Maybe it's that systemic confusion that's responsible for, why my brain just stops there? I got this.